In the US, the stage is set for a presidential rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in the race for the White House. Both candidates won enough delegates to secure their party's presidential nominations. Biden passed the threshold after winning the Georgia primary, whilst Trump secured the Republican nomination after winning the primary in Washington state. Let's bring in Brendon O'Connor. He's a professor of American politics at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, and he joins us from Sydney. Brendon, the race is now on, and many are wondering why they've been left to choose between these two ageing men. What happened?
Very good question. Well, very unlikely that an incumbent president would be challenged. Lyndon Johnson in 1968 did step aside while fighting the Vietnam War, but usually once you've won a presidential election once, you want to win it twice and be a two-term president. That's usually the mark of success. So Biden, despite being 81 years old, I think would want that place in history to be a two-term president like President Obama. So very likely he was going to stand again. What is remarkable in many ways is the Republican Party have chosen to put Donald Trump forward for the third election in a row after he'd lost an election. Usually that's a sign that you should look for a new candidate. Trump, though, controlling many within the Republican Party, pushing aside his challenges and being put forward at 77 years old with a lot of court cases hanging in the air, a lot of questions about him not being fit for office, I think being rightly asked. But these are the two candidates we're left with, two people who are not widely liked across America, but this long election season, we now know who the two party nominees are going to be.
What is the hold that Donald Trump has over the Republican Party?
Well, that again is an excellent question. I mean, I think he brings fear to his colleagues. Challenging him is very hard because of his bullying, name-calling way. His supporters are incredibly loyal and vicious against those who challenge Trump within the party. So someone like Mitch McConnell, who was longtime Senate leader, I think someone who personally probably has very little time for Trump, has kowtowed to Trump yet again very recently, endorsing him for president again. Within the Republican voting base, there seems to be a remarkable tolerance for Trump's shenanigans, lies, his legal issues. There's a loyalty to Trump that I think many people around the world find remarkable, that 45% of the American population thinks, yeah, let's give this guy another time in office for 4 years as president.
Do you think those legal issues might yet trip him up in his race to the White House?
They've been incredibly delayed. I mean, the idea that we're still debating whether Donald Trump argued that the election was stolen, which he did in 2020, whether he was involved in the insurrection and the invasion of the Capitol building in 2021, early in January, he was, whether he tried to persuade electoral officials in Georgia to find 12,000 extra votes, that's on tape. So there's very much a hard record that Trump has committed very high crimes in sense of the US, but they haven't been prosecuted over a 3-year period. So the fact that this such a long period has taken place, it seems possible that none of this will be tried before the November election, therefore making a lot of the trials probably useless. If Trump is elected, he'll dismiss the cases, he could pardon himself, he'd make himself, above the law. And so it's looking more and more unlikely that he's going to be tripped over by legal issues before November's election.
And just lastly, President Joe Biden, he's starting from a pretty low popularity point. What could he capitalise on to boost his campaign?
You're right. Joe Biden's popularity is one of the lowest of an incumbent president in recent times. There's this very big concern that he's, tripping over his words, over names, over sandbags, over stairs, that he needs to show a lot more energy. He did, I think, some of that in the State of the Union address. Clearly, any presidency is a team. I think that point needs to come across a lot stronger. And he is backtracking on some of his policies, particularly if we look at American support of Israel, at least rhetorically. There's some sort of backtracking representing Biden realizing he's in a very difficult position. Trump is ahead in the polls, and I think his team is rethinking some of its issues and hoping that Biden will perform in the next months ahead a little stronger than he has over the last year or so on the stump, on making speeches in front of the television cameras.
Brendon O'Connor, great to speak to you. Thanks for taking the time to join us here on Al Jazeera.
My pleasure.